Welcome back, gearheads. These cars didn't roar for attention. These cars didn't wear racing stripes or shout with spoilers. But under those clean, chrome-trimmed bodies, serious power. From low-key land yachts to stripped-down coupes with monster engines, these are 12 unknown sleeper cars of the 1960s. Number 12, 1963 Studebaker Lark R2. Two Studebaker isn't the first name you think of when talking about speed, but in 1963, they did something wild. They supercharged their compact sedan. The Lark R2 came with a 4.7-liter V8 and a Paxton supercharger, pushing out 289 horsepower. That may not sound crazy today, but in the early 60s, that was serious power, especially in a car that looked like it belonged to your math teacher. The R2 could hit 60 miles per hour in just over 7 seconds, putting it in the same league as much flashier muscle cars. The secret was its lightweight frame and the surprise boost from the Paxton unit, which gave it strong mid-range pull. It was available as a 2-door, 4-door, or even a wagon, so you could pick your sleeper weapon. Most buyers didn't even know this version existed, but those who did knew they were getting a stealthy little rocket. Inside, the Lark R2 didn't look much different from the base model. Plain dashboard, bench seats, nothing to tip off your passengers that you were about to launch. But under the hood, this car had everything it needed to ruin someone's day at a red light. Unfortunately, Studebaker's decline meant the Lark R2 was short-lived and is mostly forgotten today. But for those who remember it, this supercharged underdog still holds a special place in the Sleeper Hall of Fame. A supercharged Studebaker? That's already wild. But the next car? It looked like a plain Dodge family sedan, until you realized it could be ordered with one of the most legendary engines in muscle car history. Number 11, 1966, Dodge Coronet 440 with 426 Hemi. To most people in 1966, the Dodge Coronet was just another midsize sedan, a sensible family car that blended into traffic. But Dodge had a different plan for certain buyers. Hidden in the option sheet, the legendary 426 Hemi. That's right, you could order the Coronet 440, a trim name, not the engine size, with a 7.0-liter, 426 cubic inch Hemi V8 producing 425 horsepower, in a car that looked about as threatening as a rental. No racing stripes, no wild spoilers, just a clean, conservative body hiding what was essentially a drag strip monster. The result? A 4-door grocery getter that could outrun nearly anything else on the street. With the right gearing, it could do 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds and run the quarter mile in the mid-13s. Numbers that put it neck and neck with cars like the GTO, Chevelle SS, and Mustang GT350. Only this one didn't need to shout about it. The Coronet 440 with a Hemi wasn't marketed loudly. It was for those who knew what they were ordering. It flew under the radar. No loud badges, no fanfare. Just brute force under the hood and a straight face on the outside. Today, these cars are unicorns. Most people didn't tick the HEMI box and fewer survived. But if you ever see one in the wild, know you're looking at one of the most unassuming monsters of the 60s. The Coronet packed a Hemi punch, but at least it had some muscle car flair. This next car, though, was the kind of thing your uncle drove to work, yet it could hold its own against the fastest coupes of its day. Number 10, 1967, Mercury Comet Cyclone GT. At first glance, the Mercury Comet Cyclone GT looked like something your uncle might drive to church. Respectable, mature, maybe even a little dull. But in 1967, Mercury decided to give this mild-mannered midsize a shot of adrenaline. Enter the optional 390 cubic inch S-Code V8, pushing out 320 horsepower and 427 pound-feet of torque. Hooked up to a 4-speed manual, the Cyclone GT could move, and fast. It clocked 0 to 60 in about 6.5 seconds, which was impressive for a car that didn't scream muscle. Unlike its Ford cousins that wore the Mustang badge, the Comet Cyclone GT didn't draw much attention. It didn't have the swagger of a Chevelle or the reputation of a GTO, but it could keep up just fine. And with fewer people knowing what it was capable of, it became the perfect street sleeper. The ride was smooth, the interior was comfortable, and the body was clean but unremarkable. You could drive it daily without ever tipping off your neighbors that you were sitting on a hidden muscle car. The only giveaway, if you knew where to look, was a tiny GT badge on the fender. While the Comet Cyclone GT never reached the icon status of other 60s performance cars, it quietly earned its stripes. A true underdog of the era, and one that could absolutely hold its own. A Mercury with muscle might raise some eyebrows, but what if I told you a wood-paneled station wagon could outrun some of Detroit's loudest muscle cars? Number 9, 1968 Buick Sport Wagon 400. When people think of sleepers, they don't usually picture a station wagon, but Buick had other ideas in 1968. The Sport Wagon 400 looked like any other family hauler of the time. Long roof, wood grain trim, skylight windows. It was built to carry kids, groceries, and camping gear, not win races. But under the hood, Buick quietly dropped in a 400 cubic inch V8, making 340 horsepower and 440 pound-feet of torque. That was the same engine found in the Buick GS 400 muscle car, only this time, it was disguised as a family wagon. Matched with a 3-speed automatic or optional 4-speed manual, the Sport Wagon 400 could hustle. It surprised many drivers at stoplights, especially when they expected nothing more than a rolling suitcase. The torque-rich engine delivered effortless acceleration, and despite its size, it had enough grunt to keep up with some of the decade's performance icons. Inside, the Sport Wagon was all comfort, plush seats, plenty of room, and an optional third row. But for those in the know, this was more than just a practical cruiser. It was a heavy-hitting sleeper that blurred the line between muscle and mom mobile. Today, it's still overlooked, mostly remembered as a quirky long roof. But the 1968 Sport Wagon 400 proves that even wagons can bring the heat when no one's watching. A Buick wagon hiding a GS engine? That's sneaky. But the next car is where the muscle era truly began. Only back then, nobody knew it yet. Number 8, 1964, Pontiac Tempest Le Mans GTO pre-badge. Everyone knows the GTO. It's a muscle car icon, but what most people forget is that the first GTO wasn't its own model. It was hidden inside the 1964 Pontiac Tempest Le Mans. Pontiac offered the GTO as an optional package for the Tempest. If you knew what to ask for, you could spec a Le Mans with a 389 cubic inch V8 pushing up to 348 horsepower, dual exhausts, and a heavy-duty suspension. But it didn't look like a muscle car. No bold graphics, no wide stance, just another everyday Tempest. Available as a coupe, sedan, or convertible, it blended in completely, unless you noticed the subtle hood scoops or small GTO badge. But on the street, it could run the quarter mile in the low 14s, making it one of the fastest sleepers of its day. The 1964 GTO slipped past GM's ban on big engines and small cars using a marketing loophole, helping Pontiac ignite the muscle car era. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it was fast, and that made it one of the most effective sleepers of the 60s. Later, GTOs would become legends for their bold looks and brute force. But this first one, it was a stealthy assassin, and that's what makes it so special. If you're enjoying these hidden gems from the 60s, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more forgotten legends. We're just getting started. The GTO quietly kicked off a revolution. And speaking of revolutions, the next car came from AMC, wore a fastback, and could surprise anyone foolish enough to line up next to it. Number 7, 1965 Rambler Marlin with 327 V8. AMC's Rambler Marlin was supposed to be a personal luxury car. It had a fastback roofline, bucket seats, and a touch of upscale flair, but it was never meant to be a performance machine, or so people thought. What most folks didn't realize was that you could option the Marlin with AMC's 327 cubic inch V8, not to be confused with Chevrolet's version. AMC's 327 pumped out 270 horsepower and paired with a 4-barrel carburetor and optional 4-speed manual transmission, it gave the Marlin a surprising amount of punch. The car wasn't marketed as a muscle car, and it certainly didn't look the part. It was more elegant than aggressive, styled to compete with the Thunderbird and Barracuda rather than outrun them. But thanks to its torque-rich engine and relatively light curb weight, the Marlin could move. It cruised quietly, handled decently for its size, and could hang with much faster-looking cars in a straight line. And because hardly anyone expected performance from AMC, let alone from their luxury coupe, it became an accidental sleeper. The Marlin didn't sell well and faded into obscurity by the end of the decade, but that just adds to its sleeper status. It was an oddball with hidden guts, a fish-shaped fastback with a V8 growl, and for those who knew how to spec it, it was an underrated performer wrapped in a gentleman's suit. AMC's big-bodied fish was already surprising, but now let's rewind to a Ford that looked as ordinary as they come, yet packed a big block capable of turning it into a stoplight legend. Number 6, 1961. Ford Fairlane 500 with 390 V8. In the early 60s, the Ford Fairlane 500 was the picture of middle-class America. It was the car your neighbor drove, the car in every driveway. But if you checked the right boxes at the dealership, it became something else entirely. That's because in 1961, Ford quietly offered the Fairlane 500 with a 390 cubic inch V8, part of their brand new FE engine family. With a 4-barrel carburetor, it made up to 375 horsepower and could be paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. It turned the humble Fairlane into a serious street contender. But here's the thing, it still looked like a normal family sedan. Modest chrome trim, bench seats, a calm, unassuming design that didn't hint at anything sinister. The Fairlane 500 didn't have the aggressive styling of later muscle cars, which made it perfect for catching others off guard. It drove smoothly, had solid brakes for the time, and didn't sacrifice comfort. You could take the kids to school, then line up at the drag strip that evening and shock everyone there. While most people associate the Fairlane name with later GT models, the early 1960s Fairlane 500 with the big block 390 deserves its own place in sleeper history. It proved that even in an era before muscle cars took over, you could build something quiet, clean, and absolutely quick. The Fairlane hid brute strength in a conservative wrapper, but the next car, it was a Chevelle most people ignored until it smoked their GTO at the drag strip. All right, folks, we're almost there, and the biggest surprises are still coming. If you're still watching, you're one of the real ones. Hit that subscribe button and keep riding with us. Number 5, 1966 Chevrolet Chevelle 300 Deluxe with L79. Everyone remembers the Chevelle SS. It was loud, proud, and pure muscle. But in 1966, Chevy offered a much sneakier option, the Chevelle 300 Deluxe, a stripped-down version of the A-body platform that could be ordered with the potent L79 small block V8. This wasn't your average small block. The L79 was a 327 cubic inch engine with 350 horsepower, a high-lift camshaft, and free-breathing heads. It revved quick, pulled hard, and was mated to a 4-speed manual that made it incredibly responsive. In a car that didn't even have body trim or flashy badging, the Chevelle 300 Deluxe was built as a budget model, often sold to fleets and conservative buyers. No fancy chrome, no SS badges, no heavy options. But all that simplicity meant it was lighter. And when paired with the L79, it became a wolf in sheep's sheet metal. This sleeper could rip 0 to 60 in the low 6-second range and quietly run with or outrun cars that cost way more and looked twice as aggressive. It didn't need to shout. The engine did the talking. Today, these L79-powered Chevelle are rare and highly sought after by collectors who know the secret. Because in a sea of overstyled muscle cars, the 300 Deluxe was a plain-faced assassin, just the way a sleeper should be. A base model Chevelle that could embarrass its SS sibling is already impressive. But now let's talk about a full-size luxury cruiser that hid a street racing monster under the hood. Number 4, 1965 Chevrolet Impala SS 409. The Chevrolet Impala was America's best-selling car in the 1960s, and it's easy to see why. It was big, smooth, stylish, and affordable. Most people bought it as a family cruiser or a symbol of success. But hidden beneath those long, elegant lines, Chevy was offering serious firepower. In 1965, ticking the right boxes turned your full-size luxury car into a highway menace. The legendary 409 cubic inch V8, made famous by the Beach Boys, was available in the Impala SS. Depending on the setup, it produced up to 425 horsepower and 425 pound-feet of torque. That kind of power in a car over 4,000 pounds was wild. But the best part, it didn't look like a muscle car. The Impala SS was refined. You could dress it up with bucket seats, a vinyl top, and chrome, or keep it bare bones and blend in with traffic. Even with the SS trim's subtle badges and center console, most people never suspected what it could do. Drop the hammer and the 409 roared to life, launching this massive cruiser down the strip. With a 4-speed manual or power glide auto and the right gearing, it could hit the quarter mile in the high 13s, right in muscle car territory. Some buyers skipped the SS trim entirely, creating true sleepers with no badging, no chrome, just a clean body hiding a monster. The 409-powered Impala helped define big body performance. It was grace and grit rolled into one. A car that could take your grandparents to church and then dust a Corvette after lunch. The Impala SS had the muscle and the manners, but the next car? It didn't care about manners. It was built to run 12s and looked like a box fresh off the assembly line. Number 3, 1962, Plymouth Savoy Max Wedge. If you saw a 1962 Plymouth Savoy parked on the street, you'd probably think it was a government fleet car. Boxy lines, steel wheels, no flair whatsoever. But this plain wrapper hid one of the most extreme engines Chrysler ever built. Plymouth offered the Max Wedge 413 V8 under the hood, a race-bred monster with high compression, forged internals, dual 4-barrel carbs, and a cross-ram intake. It came in 2 versions, 410 horsepower and a more radical Stage 2 with 420 horsepower. This engine wasn't just big, it was brutal. The Savoy was the lightest full-size in the lineup, which made it the perfect sleeper platform. Pair it with a 3-speed manual or a heavy-duty torque flight auto, and you had a street-legal drag car capable of running the quarter mile in the high 12s, quicker than most sports cars of the era. Visually, nothing gave it away. No badges, no stripes. Just a stripped-down body built for one purpose. It didn't come with luxuries, sometimes not even a radio. It was aimed at racers who knew what they were buying and didn't care how it looked. These cars were rarely advertised and mostly sold to hardcore enthusiasts or drag racers. Many didn't survive long, and original examples are extremely rare today. But in its time, this unassuming Plymouth could show up, stay quiet, and absolutely demolish anything lined up next to it. The Max Wedge Savoy wasn't just fast. It was one of the earliest examples of a factory sleeper done right. No gimmicks, no flash, just all-out performance hiding in plain sight. This sleeper was all raw power in a plain package. But the next one, it was a budget police sedan civilians could order, with a big block V8 that turned it into a certified highway hunter. Number 2, 1967 Ford Custom 500 Police Interceptor. When most people think of performance Fords from the 60s, they picture Mustangs, Fairlanes, or maybe the Galaxy 500. But the real sleeper, it was the unglamorous Ford Custom 500, specifically the Police Interceptor package. This was the definition of bare bones. The Custom 500 was Ford's budget full-size car, cheap, no frills, and intentionally plain. Vinyl bench seats, rubber floor mats, minimal chrome. It was built for municipalities, taxi fleets, and budget-conscious buyers who didn't care about luxury. But Ford offered a secret menu option that changed everything. The 428 Police Interceptor V8. This was no mild cruiser. The 428 cubic inch big block was a torque monster, producing up to 345 horsepower and over 460 pound-feet of torque. It was the same engine found in Ford's performance models, but hidden in a car that looked like a retired patrol unit. The Police Interceptor package also came with heavy-duty suspension, beefier cooling, and performance rear axles. Essentially, it was a muscle car disguised as a government car. The beauty of it was how completely it flew under the radar. Most Custom 5s came in dull colors like beige, navy, or white, and many wore steel wheels with no hubcaps. There were no GT badges, no hood scoops, and no flashy trim. To the untrained eye, it was just a big, boring Ford. But on the road, it could outrun most factory muscle cars and look like it belonged in the slow lane while doing it. Some of these cars were sold directly to law enforcement, but others were available to civilians, usually by special order. That's what made them so rare. Few buyers knew what they were looking at. Fewer still thought to spec a full-size budget sedan with a performance engine that could put fear in the hearts of street racers. Behind the wheel, the Custom 500 Police Interceptor was all muscle. It didn't handle like a sports car, but it delivered unrelenting power and straight-line dominance. On highways, it could pass anything in its way. And at the drag strip, it earned a quiet reputation as a car you didn't want to line up against because you'd never see it coming. Today, these cars are forgotten by the masses, but remembered by collectors and old-school racers who appreciate the art of the sleeper. The 1967 Custom 500 with the 428P, it wasn't just a cop car, it was a rolling deception, one of the greatest undercover street brawlers Detroit ever built. A cop-spec Ford with a 428 was already intimidating. But the final car on this list, it came wrapped in Pontiac elegance, hiding one of the fiercest V8s of the early 60s until it hit the gas and left everything behind. Number 1, 1963, Pontiac Catalina 421HO. The Pontiac GTO may have kicked off the muscle car era, but 2 years earlier, Pontiac had already built a monster, and they slipped it into a big, unassuming, full-size coupe. The 1963 Pontiac Catalina 421 high output. On the outside, the Catalina looked like a classic early 60s cruiser. Long, low, and wide, with tasteful chrome, clean lines, logically, and just enough flash to pass as stylish without looking aggressive. It was the kind of car you'd expect to see parked at a country club or cruising the highway in comfort, not burning rubber at a stoplight. But Pontiac engineers were quietly turning it into a street brawler. The secret weapon was the 421 cubic inch V8, available in multiple configurations. But the most ferocious was the 421 high-output tri-power. With 3 two-barrel carbs, a high-lift cam, free-flowing heads, and higher compression, it produced a thundering 370 to 376 horsepower and over 500 pound-feet of torque. That was more than enough to haul the Catalina's big body down the quarter mile in under 14 seconds. A blistering time for a full-size car in 1963. You could pair it with a heavy-duty 4-speed manual transmission and a performance axle ratio, turning this highway cruiser into a fire-breathing monster. And yet, unless you knew what the 421 badge meant or recognized the subtle cues like dual exhausts and steel wheels with dog dish hubcaps, you'd never suspect what it was capable of. Pontiac didn't market the Catalina HO as a muscle car. It was a performance luxury coupe. Something for the discerning driver who wanted power without the noise. But in practice, it was an absolute hammer, built to embarrass smaller, lighter cars that thought they had the upper hand. Inside, the Catalina offered typical Pontiac class, split bench seats, real chrome trim, and a sweeping dashboard. It was comfortable, composed, and easy to drive. But when you mashed the throttle, the 421 HO transformed it into a muscle machine with manners.